Hey, happy Valentine's Day from Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin. We're broadcasting from beautiful downtown Las Vegas, Nevada. This show is about guns, related politics, and self-defense issues. Fired Up is on our website, firedupwithbobirwin.com. A new show is posted every Thursday at around 5 p.m. Pacific time. The show also appears on YouTube and numerous other media. The audio is rebroadcast for radio listeners Saturdays at noon throughout Nevada on the Nevada Talk Network. You can find the stations, 18 or 19 of them at the moment, at KELY1230.com. And that has a list of the stations that will be in your area. But the broadcasts are all at noon. It's simulcast throughout the state. If you have questions or comments, you can send an email to me at bob@firedupmail.com or leave a message on my office recorder, 257-1060. If you leave contact information, we'll respond by email, text, or telephone. Questions directed at our guests will be forwarded. There are several hundred defensive uses of firearms every week in the United States, rarely covered by the mainstream media. So we always present some of those for our listeners' education. The point of this show is really to educate gun owners. Most are good shooting, some are questionable, but they all have educational value for firearms owners. Given that, individual incidents are generally adjudicated under local law. So the advice offered here might not apply in a different jurisdiction where you might be hearing it. It applies obviously in Nevada, and we're not infallible. We may give you bad advice. So if you get into trouble, get an attorney. We can recommend those for you too. As policy here at Fired Up, the incidents are as reported except the names are omitted. My guest today is retired Police Department Detective Sergeant Michael Bunker. Mike, if you would, a little of your background.
Hi, I've been a police officer for 40 years, now retired. During that time, I handle almost all aspects of initial investigation and sometimes investigations all the way to court presentations and or convictions. Well, sometimes they got away. But I've handled almost every type of law enforcement issue that you can become involved in 40 years.
This is our Valentine's Day show, hence the red tie for Valentine's Day. Wishing you, ladies out there, a wonderful Valentine's Day.
I don't have a tie.
We usually, all the cases we're doing today have to do with women defending themselves with firearms and so forth, as a treat to women who can defend themselves with guns. This first story is from the Duluth Tribune. It was reported on February 5th in Alexandria, Minnesota. No charges will be filed in the shooting death of a 43-year-old man in his home near Leaf Valley on May 9th, 2018. You got the time differential there. The boyfriend reportedly moved into the area in the fall of 2017 and was living in a house with the victim and her two children at 7395 Country Road Northwest, etc., if you know where that is. It's about 8 miles northwest of Alexandria, Minnesota. At about 4:10 p.m. on May 9th, the sheriff's office received a 911 call about a domestic disturbance in progress at the house. As law enforcement officers were responding, they were advised by a dispatcher that a firearm was involved and shots had been fired. Arriving deputies found the body of the boyfriend in the living room area adjacent to downstairs and spoke to the woman and the two children who were in the home. The girlfriend, the resident lady, told investigators that her boyfriend had assaulted her and ultimately fired a gun at her. She stated that she had shot him immediately after he fired a handgun at her. She had her own firearm. After reviewing the investigative materials for the case, Douglas County Attorney Chad Larson is his name, determined that the 43-year-old girlfriend was acting in self-defense when she shot him. the 43-year-old's girlfriend. The guy was 43. On January 25th, in a letter to Douglas County Sheriff Troy Larson, the DA, said that the facts showed that the boyfriend had discharged a firearm at his girlfriend at close range during a physical fight. The Bureau of Criminal Apprehension processed the scene and studied the trajectory of the bullet hole, etc., found it in a consistent location with the deceased discharging his firearm at the girlfriend as she was going up the stairs. She was trying to run away, got shot. Fingerprint and DNA evidence collected at the scene and statements from the witnesses were consistent with the girlfriend's version of events. So we have a no-brainer here. Certainly this is a reasonable shooting legally and criminally. The intended victim and her children were not injured. They determined that alcohol and drugs didn't appear to have played any role in this incident at all. I pulled up a point here. This is from, you've all heard this, an Old West adage. It was first appeared in 1836. God made man, but Sam Colt made them equal. That applies to women too. Welcome to 2019. What do you think, Mike?
Obviously, a good shooting. The woman had done everything possible to mitigate the situation in that she called the police, and I'm sure that the dead suspect was aware that the police had been called. Further, he fired a round at her as she apparently was trying to vacate the scene, leave, which is, the best thing to do if you can possibly do it is leave. And she was defending herself and her children. So I wouldn't see that there's any problem with that shooting given the circumstances that we've talked about.
Yeah, I often say this at the end of reading incidences, and I don't want to be redundant with every story I do in this type, but think of the different result had this woman not had a firearm available to defend herself. God knows what it would have been. This next story is from KOCO TV5. It's a ABC station. Reported back in 2012 that a young Oklahoma mother shot and killed an intruder to protect her 3-month-old baby on New Year's Eve, less than a week after the baby's father had died of cancer. The young mother said a week earlier a 24-year-old male subject dropped by on the day of her husband's funeral, claiming that he was a neighbor who wanted to say hello. The 18-year-old mother did not let him into her home. Good idea. On New Year's Eve, he returned with a second man, this time armed with a 12-inch hunting knife. That is, the original guy was armed. As the men were going from door to door outside her home trying to gain entry. The woman called 911 and grabbed her 12-gauge shotgun. She told ABC News affiliate KOCO that she got her 12-gauge, went into her bedroom, got a pistol also, put a bottle in the baby's mouth, and called 911. The young mother asked the 911 dispatcher, "I've got 2 guns in my hand. Is it okay if I shoot him if he comes through this door?" That wouldn't be the first time dispatcher's got a call like that. The 911 dispatcher confirmed that with mom that the doors to her home were locked, as she asked again if it was okay to shoot the intruder if he were to come through the door. The dispatcher apparently responded from the recording, "I can't tell you you can do what is necessary, but you have to do your best to protect the baby." The woman was on the phone with 911 for a total of 21 minutes. When the first male then kicked in the door and came after her with a knife, the teen mom shot and killed the 24-year-old. Police are calling the shooting justified. Well, who would? You're allowed to, this is from the detective Dan Huff, who was the spokesman at the scene. You're allowed to shoot an unauthorized person that is in your home. The law protects you. The law provides the remedy. and sanctions the use of deadly force. Detective Dan Huff is with the Blanchard Police Department. The second home invader turned himself into police shortly thereafter. The woman talked to the media. She said, "I wouldn't have done it, but it was my son." The woman told the media, "It is not an easy decision to make. It was either going to be him or my son, and it wasn't going to be my son. There's nothing more dangerous than a woman with a child," she said. That's the kind of the mama bear comment. The mama bear will always defend, and she did a good job of that. This obviously is a perfect use of self-defense with a firearm. I can only imagine the horrible outcome if this young mother had not been armed. One of the things I really like about this case is she stayed on the phone with 911, and 911 heard everything, breaking glass. They heard the warnings, they heard the shots, and so forth and so on. So it puts her in really good stead. Mr. Bunker.
The only thing I can point out is she was on the phone 911 for 21 minutes.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not, depending on where she's located, the address, how remote the police officers are, 21 minutes is an exceptional amount of time. But if you've ever been in a traffic accident, how long does it take the police to get there? Oh, it took them over an hour to get here. You look at the records and they were there in 10 minutes. Well, when you're involved in a situation, your sense of time goes out the window. But 21 minutes, any time during that time, she could have been forced at that moment. She was lucky to have that much time and to have that much time with law enforcement, the dispatcher. And the police can never give you permission over the phone 40 miles away from your home to shoot somebody. It's just not going to happen. They don't have the ability to give you permission to shoot somebody.
But it happens all the time.
They always ask, well, how many people over the years that we've done things, well, if he comes into my house, can I shoot him? There's a whole lot of other circumstances that have to go with that. Just because somebody comes into your house doesn't mean you can shoot them. There's a lot of other things that have to take place before you can use deadly force. But I'm happy to see that the woman was able to protect herself and her child.
We are going to break for a moment for commercials, and we'll be back in just a minute, so don't go away. Our new Fired Up logo merchandise is available online at firedupwithboberwinstore.com. We have our orange camo pattern shirts, as you can see here. We have orange camo pattern hats, baseball type hats. We have our famous Aussie button up on the side hats, all of which are available. The men's tees now come in small, medium, large, extra large, 2XL, and 3XL just in. We have the hats are available. The Aussie hats are in size small, medium, large, and extra large. That is 7, 7 1/4, 7 1/2, 7 3/4 to us Americans. We also have our Pink Ladies tank tops in small, medium, large, extra large, and 2XL. And of course, my book, The Reality of Armed Self-Defense. We accept credit and debit cards, PayPal, and just about every other payment method known to man on that site. It's being handled by a contractor who does all that for us. So I am inviting you to look onto our website, add the word store, and you will find all this stuff for sale, which will help support Fired Up. Thank you.
My name is Jerry Creed, and I'm a gun trust attorney. If you want to own an NFA firearm, a gun trust is a great way to own it because it allows multiple people to lawfully possess a firearm instead of just a single individual. I have reviewed lots of gun trusts, and I have found they often don't include the forms you need to bring people on as trustees and remove them as trustees. In addition, a gun trust will save you the cost of probate and avoid probate, and it can protect your executor and family members. You know, there isn't an element of intent in these laws that affect the NFA firearm possession. So it doesn't matter if your wife didn't intend to sell the gun at a garage sale or yard sale, or your daughter didn't intend to drive the car with the silencer in the trunk. A gun trust is a great way to protect your family members and friends and share in the fun and pleasure of owning NFA weapons. If you want a gun trust done right, remember to trust Jerry.
And we are back. This story, this last rather lengthy, complicated story, comes from the Courier Journal in Louisville, Kentucky. They reported on April 19th of 2017, a 28-year-old woman and a 45-year-old woman grabbed a gun and a baseball bat, and they headed over to an Algonquin apartment complex on Easter Sunday to settle a score. Rather than just read from here, I'm going to digress a minute and say this is really complicated. We have two women and two women. They are involved in a dispute between themselves over who is dating whose boyfriend, which wouldn't really matter. There are two females inside the home that these other two went to. They are aged 22 and 27. The two that arrived at the home to right the wrong were a 28-year-old woman and a 45-year-old woman, which I will refer to continue by their ages. You got to remember that the set from inside the house is 22 and 27. And the ones arriving at the house are 28 and 45. That being said, you want to write that down because it's going to get complicated. Anyway, they said that. And so here we have, they arrived at the home, the older pair, and started bashing their rival's car with a baseball bat. The two females inside the home, the 22 and 27-year-old, rushed out to confront them. The 28-year-old beat the 22-year-old with a bat, and then the 45-year-old shot that same 22-year-old in the head. The 27-year-old partner from inside the home started to run away, but was shot in the stomach as she's leaving. When officers arrived, they found both victims. The 22-year-old was dead in the street. Her friend was rushed to the University of Louisville Hospital in critical condition, netting the defendants an additional charge of assault with serious physical injury, the arrest record showed, which would obviously handle that. Nearly 12 hours later, the two surrendered to police. They were arraigned in Jefferson District Court and were both charged with murder at two separate bail amounts for each, one for each of them of $500,000 cash was set. So they are in jail waiting for trial because they obviously couldn't make $1 million bail for the two of them. Updating this story to now, February 5th of 2019, the mother and her daughter, who were charged with murder and assault in a double shooting on Easter morning in 2017, have been acquitted. Follow me here, what is going on? The two were blamed for beating a rival with a baseball bat and fatally shooting her in the head on Easter Sunday morning, have been identified now as a mother and daughter. The Jefferson Circuit Court jury Monday found them not guilty of the murder of the 22-year-old. They were also acquitted of the assault and shooting her friend, age 27. Their lawyers, a fellow named Rob Eggert and Mark Chandler, argued that their clients acted in self-defense. Eggert said his 45-year-old client, the one who did the shooting, had been the victim of several previous crimes and had a concealed carry permit. Used her gun to keep her daughter from being hit in the head with a baseball bat. The verdict came after a trial before Judge Charles Cunningham that lasted 5 days. Bearing in mind these women have been in jail for a long time. Looking at what happened, we look at who supplied the force for the confrontation. I've talked about this many times on shows. The person who caused the parties to come together. The original 2 younger women went over to bash up a car, which is obviously a serious property crime. The others came out of their house and began engaging in this physical fight. We look at who supplied the force for the contact when they started the fighting. When threatened with a baseball bat, can you use deadly force to defend yourself? There was clearly a serious property crime by the defendants, but having spent almost 2 years in jail, they in effect got off with time served and were released. A lot of stuff here.
They had some incredibly good attorneys.
Yeah, they earned their money.
How they got paid, I have no idea, but to get off with that, particularly, okay, I can see the point where the one woman gets shot. Now, this is only as it's said here. Shot the woman to keep from her daughter being hit in the head with a baseball bat. Okay, in fear of your life or fear of great bodily harm from an individual. Okay. The other woman running away has broken off contact and is running away.
Yep.
And you shoot her. She didn't die, but how is that not a criminal act if the individual has broken off and is no longer a suspect? She is fleeing the scene. Now, admittedly, it was all part and parcel of a very large event, but the police officers that investigated this scene must have been pulling their hair out, trying to figure out who did what to whom and how it happened. I think in reality, the district attorney's office just threw up their hands and said, I don't want to spend any more time on this with the assault on the other person. You know, to heck with it. We're done. Away we go. Time served.
I understand if I hadn't worked with so many attorneys on so many cases, and I understand what happened here, and I understand the jury's reasoning. We look at who supplied the force to bring the parties together. The 2 women that were the original aggressor went over and started busting up a car, which is hundreds of dollars or whatever worth of damage to the car. But the women in the house, instead of calling the police, keeping it under observation, they're the ones that came out and started the physical fight. So they're the one that caused the force, that provided the force to bring the parties together. You could simplify this case by saying, there's a guy in your front lawn who's hitting your car with a baseball bat, and you run out of the house and shoot him.
You're going to lose. If you run out of your house with a gun to shoot some guy that is beating up your car,
you're going to lose. You are wrong in bringing a gun to that confrontation. However, now we look at, they've been in jail for almost 2 years with no bail. The the credit for time served when they're convicted just of that misdemeanor has been done. They're out. We've seen that in court cases a lot here where they let guys out for.
Once again, something else that it isn't issued here, but do you think there's any potential civil suits against them for the wrongful use of force? Because in a criminal trial, you have one set of standards of evidence, and in a civil trial, it's a balancing. It's 50-50. If you've got 51% on your side, you're liable.
Well, and again, on the other side of that, you've got the jury acquitted them of the criminal charge. The criminal charge that's left is going away. So, and I would presume they don't have insurance and whatever. It's the when I was working as a bailiff, we'd have civil cases go, and they'd say, yeah, the guy owes you $700. And then he'd come over to me and go, as the bailiff, where do I get the money? And I said, well, you can seize whatever property. You have to get an attorney to do that, and so forth and so on. And they don't have any money. You can't get blood out of a turnip, and we don't have debtor's prison. That part is not fair, but what we're addressing here is how the law works, which is imperfect. It's way better than anywhere else in the world, but it's imperfect.
Yes, but if you have a civil suit and you win the civil suit and you have a 22 and 27-year-old and you win the civil suit, you can garnish their wages for the rest of their life if you get a judgment against them. I believe we have a very prominent murder case that ended in acquittal where the civil judgment is still being carried out.
Right.
There's read
lots of
between
those.
the lines who we're talking about.
There are lots of those, and another reason why I say, if you don't have to get in a gunfight, they never go away. Anyway, we're all set for this show now. We are coming right up on the end. Want to remind you all that you can find our recent shows at www.firedupwithboberwin.com. It contains a lot of older shows. There's 15 or 20 of them up there now, I believe. Also, we ask you to patronize our sponsors, particularly the firedupwithboberwinstore.com. We'll be back next Thursday with another show. And when watching any media where this show appears, just hit subscribe, and the shows will automatically come to you on Thursday late afternoon. Please share the broadcast with your friends. I'm forever amazed. I get all sorts of calls that they watch the show in this state or that state or in Bolivia or wherever it is, and it's all over the world now. So I appreciate the publicity, and that's why we're selling the merchandise, so we can actually make money doing this instead of give freely of my time. Thank you all for supporting Fired Up. Have a great Valentine's Day. Do something nice for your wife today. Have a good evening.